Yo, what is going on, guys? Godrekton here today, bringing you another guide to my Master Renekton guide series. And today, we are talking about runes for Renekton within Season 13. As I'm making more of these guides, I am starting to think that I will make more of a guide series, and I am going to go under the name of Mastering Renekton because I truly feel like these guides' aim is certainly to make players master Renekton, like I'm entailing. So, a lot of these type of videos are going to be very highly detailed and educational based. So whenever you want to see a guide that's very lengthy and very all in with what my content is, then I definitely highly recommend watching these type of videos if you truly want to get the most knowledge as possible. With that being said, this is my rune guide video for Renekton in Season 13. So in my last video, I talked about a lot of builds, and I did have a lot of people asking me to what runes they should take. Now, I think when you talk about just like itemization and runes, I feel like a separate video would probably help with that because one people need like one thing or the other, or maybe people just want to have like a different understanding or have a higher ranked Renekton player talk about when they take certain runes. Because quite honestly, there's a lot of people that run many different runes, and I'm going to be explaining the thought process in that, and I'll also be explaining what I think is ultimately the best if you're going to be playing Renekton with these type of runes within Season 13. Before I do go into runes, though, I do want to talk about the main thing that probably should be considered at all times when it does come to runes. And that is that I feel like, ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter what runes you're taking. Runes provide sometimes a marginal advantage, sometimes even a big advantage, but ultimately, it depends on playstyle. You can play Sorcery second if that's what works for you. You can play Electrocute first, play Phase Rush. It really doesn't matter. Everybody has a game plan. Everybody has a way to play the game. And if that's what you're succeeding with, then ultimately that's all that should matter. At the end of the day, it's whatever your comfort is, whatever is working for you. But if things don't work anymore, that's when you should probably try to play other builds, because that's when you're going to feel a lot better as a player. You're going to have more tools in your toolkit, as I like to say. And the more tools you have, the more ways you can win a game. Ultimately, that's what should be the most important thing when you are playing a champion like Renekton, which you want to one trick and take him to the mastering level that I have, or any other high level Renekton player. With that said, let's talk about runes. So when it comes to runes, let's talk about the Keystones first and foremost. So for Renekton Keystones, your typical two main Keystones that you probably want to go 95, 99, 100% of the time are either Press the Attack or Conqueror. Now I know there are some other players, Nerf, that like to go Electrocute, and some even like to go Phase Rush, Panther. The idea with these like runes per se isn't so much for like the thought of like what it looks like it's doing. It's like the theory, right? So I think like Electrocute or something like that is more going for pressure. Having that damage and instant burst trades can also change up your play pattern, meaning that you can get certain scenarios that you're looking for. Like if you're playing against a Jax, Electrocute can easily proc fast and you can disengage, meaning you'll win the trade. You have more health than him, like you preserve your own health, like you don't overextend a trade. Like it is very safe for that reason. However, the con with a playstyle like this is that you're waiting for a rune that takes too long to come up. And that's my problem with like going these other types of gimmicky runes, which I will call them that as they are. And that's like the reward is too low for makes it like a value choice, for Renekton itself. That's why I think Press the Attack and Conquer as main keystones are probably the most important, and the reason why you want to be taking these over anything else in the game, because they're always available. There's always a gameplay, like a game plan you can play with them that ultimately helps Renekton succeed in being able to be the champion that you can be. But first of all, let's talk about the probably a question as old as time itself, a question that's probably been muttered through all the way in the caveman ages, like when they were making fire and like talking, like learning how to talk and process information. And that simply is, what is better, Press the Attack or Conqueror? Now both of these runes are great in their own respective ways, and that's why I don't really think there's necessarily a winner here, because throughout my time of watching Renekton players and studying the champion, I don't just have 5 million mastery points, but I do study the people that put a big influence on me. Like you have your Korean Renekton players where it's like Golden Wak Wak, Powder Snow, Nana. You have like your Chinese ones like Zhao Yu. You also have like NA players like 3-in-1, Panther, Romanian, you name it, right? Like narrative, Jurassic. Like you have so many of these like type of players, right? That all have their own play styles and ways to play. Studying the way that they play the game, you know, brings a big impact to me to give like myself a lot of knowledge in like how things work. So from watching all these people, you know, I have learned that it simply doesn't matter what you entirely play. It's just how you do it at the end of the day. So a lot of my analogies too do come from the idea of like boxing. You know, there's lots of different types of boxers in the world. You know, you have your puncher, right, who wants to just like look for a knockout, like try and land like a clean blow. You know, maybe they're weak in some areas of being technical, but ultimately their power, like the way they set up a punch, can also be the dictator in them being able to win a fight. You know, you have your boxer style like person who likes to jab, move, you know, be very technical. You know, set up you know, use a lot of feints, set up the right hand with jabs, like body shots, like you name it, right? There's all these different technical styles that have pros and cons ultimately, to where like that's what allows them to succeed and be as best as they can, you know? So in this context of like Renekton and playstyles, it's ultimately the same way. If you can find a way to use your gameplay, your game plan, you'll ultimately succeed. But it's about finding that and learning that too. And sometimes you do need to test other things, because ultimately that's what helps you be a better player as well. And I do want to cover more of this type of stuff in another video as well. But for the sake of this video, let's just stay on topic here. I don't want to lose you guys. So PTA or Conqueror, what is the difference and what makes both of them a valuable choice? Press the attack is good for short trades. The way this rune works is that we proc it with 3 auto attacks, which can also be procced by our unempowered and empowered W. I'm also empowered because that's free. That counts as 3 hits. Proccing that means I'll deal up to 12% additional damage afterwards, which then my whole combo on Renekton will be amplified. This means items like Ruin King as well, like a Ravenous Hydra, as well as spells. Like everything that we have in our kit that isn't like true damage will be amplified, ultimately making our combo a lot more lethal and allowing playstyles like full AD Renekton to be very devastating with items like Prowler's Clawbork and anything else of that note. So the idea with Press the Attack is to help us assassinate people. It allows us to, you know, have really quick, go for really quick trades, like, you know, in and out style combos, look for all-ins a lot more, burst trades. That's kind of the whole idea of Press the Attack. We want to burst people down. We want to do like 2 trades, and then the second trade is like a kill trade in lane, more so. So typically we're waiting for our E cooldown, and like we go in, like do a Q cancel, auto empower W, auto E, and that alone will proc us the Press the Attack and make use of it efficiently and effectively as well. And then when it comes to the team fights, or like going for an execution play on somebody, you know, we would do like a flash, or we would just engage with E, auto WR, EQ auto attack. That is a animation cancel combo that, you know, I am probably showing on the screen right now. And this, the way like our damage works is it's all amplified from the W. So everything after the fact is amplified, and that helps us eliminate and assassinate targets, which is very vital for a rune like this when you're trying to play it the best that you can, which is squeezing every little bit of damage that you can in a fast time to proc you know, just to make use of the Press the Attack. So Press the Attack's good for, you know, short trades. What is Conqueror good for? Well, Conqueror is good for the exact opposite, and just trying to like keep more of a, you know, a more controlled fight. So that doesn't mean necessarily going for long fights, like playing with Conqueror. We don't just walk in and like try and overextend our trades massively, thinking that it's going to benefit us, because there's a lot of champions that will tell you otherwise, you know, like your Trenimirs, Jax, Darius. You get simply abused for playing like that. But that's not also to say Conqueror doesn't work against them. So the way we play Conqueror is we play more controlled. We play off our Qs, our autos. We try and just like keep, you know, we try and keep a flow, you know, we're like in a little flow state. We don't just play off our E looking for all-ins. We can play it the same way as Press the Attack, but we are going to be losing damage, and when we want to think about proccing our Keystone, we want to take a bit smaller trades, like an auto Q. We wait back, auto, as we're like stacking our Conqueror, and then when our Q's about to come up and we're still in combat, you know, trying to play in and out, we can proc the Conqueror earlier on, then use the rest of our damage to win the fights, and, you know, just be, you know, a force to be reckoned with. So ideally, you know, in your matchups like tanks, like things where you need to like use your cooldowns like effectively, like play a bit slower, or a champion where you're waiting for them to do something like a Jax, you know, you play it like you do like an auto Q, you can like space out, go back in, and then like just do your, you know, combo as normal. or like you're just laning. But the idea too is like having the extra AD from Conqueror allows you to stat check your opponent. Stat checking basically means you have higher stats than your enemy, allowing you to ultimately win the fight. Now there are matchups like Gangplank that I recommend. I might have like a spreadsheet, not spreadsheet, like a tier list here in the video where I show you what matchups I take Conqueror and PTA into, and ultimately the matchups where I take Conqueror more so. These allow me to have extra power into the matchups that are a lot harder for a melee. And those, you know, consist of like an Urgot, Gangplank, Jax, things where the fights aren't so easy and my usual trading pan isn't really that strong. Conqueror, with the healing that it gives me and the AD, allows my Qs and just like my standard like consistent trades to be a lot stronger, which help me overthrow the enemy and just stat check my way to victory. So with Conqueror being a more controlled way of playing, ultimately, what is better for lane, and when should I take one or the other? Well, as I just mentioned, I think going the Conqueror into matchups where you play a bit slower and play more off your, like you play more controlled, I think that's when it's a lot more successful. However, we can't really play a Conqueror into a ranged matchup, or maybe even a fighter matchup, because the press the attack is way too valuable, and with the time that we have to do damage, press the attack will always triumph the Conqueror if you're looking to do quick trades, and you're looking to do as much damage as possible on a champion like a Quinn or Vayne, like anything where like, you know, you only have a small window to do damage, and that window needs to have as much damage as possible, and that's where press the attack ultimately succeeds as a rune choice of a Conqueror. But with that being said, I mean, there's not really much else to talk about, but if we just gotta talk about builds and playing these runes, press the attack is better. You can take it into you basically take it into any game that you want, but sometimes you need to value as well if it's actually like a better choice. So press the attack isn't only for damage too, but it is also about utility, and because like you proc the exposure damage onto a champion, that means all your allies are able to do 12% extra damage onto a target too. So that allows more food for thought too, if you are playing more of an early game style where you're doing fast trades, like going for very like high pressure and scary like situations for your enemy that you're allowed to do it against, e.g. Riven, Yone, Yasuo, any fighter matchup that you think you're stronger than, or range matchup. And then when it comes to mid game, you can build a bit more tanky if you like to, and then use that as like an extra utility bonus. However, I think if you're going to play a style like this, or just like a rune like this, Prowler Bork is definitely, you know, 100% with this. You can go like Eclipse maybe with press the attack if you like to. Maybe like a Godrekton style, maybe, or, you know, it depends on what you really feel like. But press the attack is a lot more versatile than Conqueror, I would say, just because like not only is it used aggressively and does a lot more damage in the process compared to Conqueror, but you know, it also does provide a lot of utility as well to allow your teammates to do a lot more as well. The next thing with Conqueror as well. Conqueror, you know, again, take it into matchups where you want to, you know, space out your damage, like be a bit more slow and controlled, have a lot extra stats to overthrow your enemy and make them, you know, double guess all inning you. That's like a really big benefit, I think. So your matchups like Gangplank, Jax, like the ones I've already talked about and probably shown on the screen, or maybe I'm showing right now, these are ideally the best matchups to take it against, in my opinion, because it allows you to have extra damage of your Qs early, gain a lot of pressure in the lane, and you can even 1v2 with the rune too. And compared to press the attack, I think the 1v2 potential from a Conqueror can really change the fight, and also allow you to snowball topside early, which then allows you to go into your bruiser or tank builds, and then just, you know, be a force in the mid to late game. Well, let's say mid game also, and just help you like be more like team fight, like diver based, where you dive in, tank damage for your team, and your team like does damage behind you. So ultimately, those are my thoughts and opinions on Keystones. So let's move into the smaller runes. The next runes we have here are our first tree of precision. So Overheal, Triumph, and Presence of Mind. Now, with how Renekton works, our only choices to really take are basically Triumph. I don't think Overheal is really that good because you're not really getting that extra Overheal per se, because you need a Vamp Scepter, like a Borg. You can take it for that reason, but I just don't think like you're really prioritizing that. You'd rather prioritize the Triumph, which allows you to turn the fights earlier on, and being that you can like 1v2 as well and then get that extra health to stall time and then help you go into your next combo, it's a pretty big deal. So I think it's just a no-brainer. And I know it's getting nerfed next patch a little bit. I don't really know the details right now. Maybe I'll show them on screen. But I think it's still the only applicable choice that we can take in this tree here. That being said, I think Triumph is just the choice you always want to take. The next runes that we have here in the Legend side of the tree is we have Alacrity, Tenacity, and Bloodline. Now, just to cross one out, I think Bloodline is not really good on Renekton. I think it simply takes way too long to stack. And to only gain 100 health off completing a rune, I think is very underwhelming. And I just don't really see a point to ever really be building this. Or, sorry, be taking this, rather. So with that being said, then we have Alacrity and Tenacity. Now, my ideology on these runes is that I would rather take Alacrity into a game where I'm not against a champion with a stun in my lane, or like the mid game doesn't have a lot of CC. So if there is a game where there's like lack of CC in the game and I feel like I can get away with going this, I'll always be taking the Alacrity. Alacrity not only helps us just have attack speed for like our auto attacks, but it allows us to, weave in autos faster. It allows us just to like animation cancel faster, stack more fury, which is the biggest deal out of these. And when you have like faster fury generation, that means you have like a faster way to also get to your empowered abilities, and having that as a strength makes it incredibly strong for Renekton to turn fights, or simply just, have that DPS and dueling power in the 1v1s. On the other side, if I cannot take the Alacrity, I'll be taking the Tenacity, because Tenacity always helps. And I know Tenacity got nerfed this patch, but just being able to have this over like a Merc Treads in lane, like building to that, I think it's incredibly big. And for the matchups too, having that Tenacity helping me get out of stuns can be the decider whether or not I kill my opponent too. So ultimately, that's all you really need to know on these two runes. Are you against a lot of stuns? Do the enemy have a lot of CC? If so, Tenacity. If not, Alacrity. In the last rune of the Precision Tree, we have these three. Now, again, to cross one out, I think Cut Down is just, and like, you never want to really go with this. Because Renekton's ult gives extra health, it already takes away the bonus stat of dealing the more damage to people that have more health than you. So I think that's also like a no-brainer not to take. Leaving us with Last Stand and Coup de Grace. In the past, there's been a lot of conversations on whether or not we take one or the other. Now, both are pretty good, but I think in most situations, I think the Last Stand is just better. Now, we're already starting with, as you can see, 5 to 11% extra damage, and Coup de Grace gives us 8 only if the enemy's below 40% health. Now, this can be incredibly good because Renekton has a lot of bursty trades. However, with Renekton's passive, giving more fury when he's below 50% health, I think the Last Stand allows for more of an outplay factor. And being that we can also bait our opponents to fight us, it becomes a very devastating combo to have the Last Stand damage and the additional fury with this rune. So I think it's just a better choice for laning, as well as like fights as well. When you're turning on low health, it's just absolutely devastating. Apply that with a Prowler's Claw, Bork, any percentage-based damage. This rune is just insane, especially press the attack too. It's a lot of percentage damage we're having, and it's just a no-brainer in my opinion. I just think Last Stand's always better. No matter if you're a full AD or you're a bruiser player. I think it's just the best choice here. Now let's talk about the Resolve Tree. Resolve Tree, I think, is just probably the best secondary runes you can have on Renekton. And I know over the years it's been nerfed a lot of these runes, but I think when you consider laning power, like, as a main attribute to winning a game, I think it's incredibly important just like optimizing these runes, like going into these runes for a matchup, because they're so versatile in what you can take Resolve Tree into, to where like you'll just have so much power like in a lot of different matchups. And I think ultimately it's just the best choice for longevity and just switching your playstyle against many different champions too. But yeah, let's talk about that now. Firstly, let's talk about like the first row. Font of Life and Shield Bash don't really apply in Renekton, so the only option we can have is Demolish. I think Demolish is pretty good if you want to get platings against a certain matchup that's kind of difficult. Maybe a champion that has like a lot of wave kill like Garen. Once you shove them out of lane and they recall, I think having that Demolish can help you get a free plating, so that becomes incredibly good if you just want to get extra gold and not be gated by the enemy's wave clear, just pushing one button. So I think it's good for like those type of games personally. Now, if you are in a matchup where you can win too, the Demolish and using that to take towers quickly is also pretty good. But I think that's just as like where you really go with it. I don't think it's any more better as the game goes on, unless you're split pushing. But I think it's more marginable at most. So yeah, I think you just take it when like you have a pretty free matchup, or maybe you just want to get playings in a matchup where it's a bit difficult for that. In the next row, we have these 3 runes. Now, Conditioning, Second Wind, and Bone Playing can all be pretty much taken, but I think it really depends on the context. So, to start with Bone Playing, I think Bone Playing makes sense in matchups where people are going to be engaging on you or have lots of burst damage. The damage mitigation from Bone Playing is pretty good for stifling the enemy's attacks on you, like if they're trying to all-in you, like a Riven, let's say. You have to think about that too. It's like a psychological thing the enemy has to think about. And if you're under tower with 50% health or lower, having Bone Playing up makes you incredibly hard to dive. And if the enemy takes the bait for diving this, it becomes a giant mistake, and then that can end up getting them killed too. So that adds more of an insurance on your life too. And it's not just about like you block like, you know, 3 spells, but it's just about the psychological factor, and it makes you incredibly hard to dive as well, in my opinion. So I think it's good for people that like maybe are strong against you, maybe they have like some burst power, and it makes it, and it's like hard to get off of you. So I think that's like when you typically want to really take it. Now the next choice as well, I think that is pretty good, is Second Wind. Second Wind is another good option on Renekton into like poke matchups. Like having this with a D-Shield combination is incredibly strong, and it did get nerfed this patch by like oh no, sorry, the D-Shield did get nerfed this patch by like 2 health every like 5 seconds, but ultimately I don't think it matters so much as long as you take Second Wind, because that can give you a lot of healing power, which gets you through the laning phase, and once you get level 3 to level 6, I think you're pretty much good to go, and the enemy's like early pressure won't really affect you. So yeah, I think it's just incredibly strong with D-Shield. So if you are going to take one, you're best taking both, because they just synergize so well, and it makes every poke-based matchup so easy if you know what you're doing. Lastly, Conditioning. Now, Conditioning, I think, is only good if you're going to go like a Jack Show or like Godrekton style, and you think that your lane is like not really as let's say interesting. So if you're against your tank matchups and you plan on just going to mid game and scaling and knowing that you're not going to do a lot, I think Conditioning is incredibly good. So I think that's like probably the only time you want to be taking it. Now, if you do want to go like some of a gimmicky build where you just go on like full tank and like having all these like stats, then Conditioning is also good for that. But ultimately, just to like simplify it, Conditioning's good in uninteractive lanes. Second Wind is good for poke, and Bone Playing's good against enemy burst and people that want to fight you. So that's basically all there is like with these runes here. Then the last row of Resolve, we have Overgrowth, Revitalize, and Unflinching, all of which are also very good on Renekton, and all of which you can take depending on the matchup. Now, firstly, I'll probably take my lesser used option, which is Revitalize. Revitalize is probably good if you want to go for more sustain-based play. So again, in a matchup where you're against poke, this could be really good, or someone that like does damage, and if you want to go a playstyle that's like lifesteal based, I think it's incredibly good. Now, I think I'm also think about it for the early game, because if we're playing on lower health, we're going to be healing a lot more, we're going to be out-sustaining the enemy, they're going to be using a lot of mana, they're going to be using a lot of their health to like do trades on us, and that's what baits them into fighting us too, and then ultimately maybe dying as well. So it is another good choice to boost our Second Wind and D-Shield power, as well as our Q healing too. Aside from that as well, if we're not going to take it for those reasons, Flinching is good against a lot of CC. Again, matchups that have stuns in your lane or like in the mid to late game, Unflinching paired with Tenacity is a very strong combo, which I think is very good. And obviously, the lower health we are, the more Tenacity we have. So it does synergize with Renekton too. Like all these runes, where like we were below like 50% health, they are getting like impacted quite a lot because our Fury regeneration, our runes like coming up from like the lower health we are. It allows for a lot of outplay potential. I think that's where like Renekton really shines too, and why he's like strong with these rune setups. And ultimately, that's like what you need to think about too if you are going to be taking some fights, or just considering like more, you know, knowledge for info, like whether or not we can take fights or not, based on the values that we're getting from being lower health. Unflinching, very good against CC. That's all you really need to think about. And lastly, Overgrowth. Overgrowth is pretty good, again, in lanes where we're just going to be coasting. Maybe like our lane's fine. We just want to get extra health for mid-game. Typically around the 200 to 250 minion mark, we're getting like 200 health or so extra. Maybe a little bit more the more health you have. So for the tank styles, it is incredibly good for, where we're getting like lots of health and playing around that. And it just makes us a little bit more tankier too, overall, and more beefier, which can synergize with a Titanic as well. So that's another good point to take that. Alright, so now that we talked about the Resolve tree, let's talk about Domination. Now, Domination is considered a secondary rune path that you can go over than Resolve. However, I feel like a lot of these choices probably aren't as good as Resolve in the grand scheme of things. But I'll cover more into that towards the end of the minor rune talk, because I think there's another conversation to talk about when we decide these runes as well. But firstly, if we're going to talk about Domination, let's talk about the top row of runes. Let's begin with Cheap Shot. Probably like the most underwhelming out of the first three on the first row. I don't think this is really, it doesn't really matter. Now, Renekton W can apply more damage with this, meaning that it can do more damage, but to only get 10 to 45 by level 18, like, it doesn't really seem that great to me, and I think it's such a useless rune. And considering that the cooldown is already so long on this rune in the first place, it's more or less like, does it really matter? Or rather, like, because our W is such a high cooldown and, like, this is so low, like, we can't really use it consistently. Like, it's not, like, for another champion that can use it. I mean, I don't really know anyone that can really take this rune now that I think about it. However, I mean, it could be an option, but I just don't think it's that good. Hence why I'll probably move on from this to talk about Taste of Blood. Taste of Blood is probably one of the better options you could take if you're considering top rune choices. Taste of Blood works in a way where if we're dealing damage, we're going to get a certain amount of health. As it says here, 16 to 30. It's pretty minimal, and it does have a little bonus AD scaling. Probably not the best, but I guess you could take it if you want to squeeze out a bit of extra health early for your Q. But again, trying to negate the nerfs that we had before on our Q with this rune, I just don't think there's really a point to it. And I don't really ever seeing it do much in the first place. So I'm not really a big fan of this, if you ask me. And I think the only rune that you could go that also makes sense with Renekton in general is Sudden Impact. Sudden Impact here gives you 9 lethality. 9 lethality on 2 dashes. And the way this works, right, is that if you E first, it will go on cooldown. And then if you time your E well enough, the second Sudden Impact will reset. So you get basically 10 seconds worth of Sudden Impact lethality. And using this on a squishy champion just applies even more damage, and it's pretty insane. And it's not just working on our Slice and Dice and our E, but it is also working on Prowler's Claw and Flash, meaning that there's a lot of uses where this rune actually comes into play, and I think it's probably like the strongest option you can take if you are going to take a Domination rune here. Next tree, I don't really take any of these 3 runes, so I'm not really going to talk about these. However, you know, maybe there's a chance you want to go Eyeball Collection, where we kill wards, and takedowns. Sorry, so if we kill wards and we get takedowns, we get a certain amount of AD. But again, I don't really think it's that impactful. Like, it's a scaling rune that doesn't really do so much. It gives us a little bit of extra AD, but it's nothing too big and out of this world. I still think a Sudden Impact would be doing a lot more. And I think the next set of runes are definitely worth more taking than any of these in this column right here. The next runes we could talk about now are the 5-stack runes here. So I'll go from worst to best first, because I think it's probably the best way of doing it. But the first rune that I probably think is the worst out of all these is definitely going to be Ultimate Hunter. Renekton doesn't really care about the ult cooldown so much, because I mean, typically in the first place, we're a very like one-shot based champion. We might just look for a 1 duel, and then after we kill them, we have a lot of time to be doing something, and then we have to back eventually, and then by that time our ult's up, especially with the additional cooldown reduction we're getting. So I kind of feel like getting this rune doesn't really do so much justice, and either way, our ult cooldown's going to be like less than 60 throughout the game. Now this is only with like, you know, a lot of CDR in the first place. But still, I don't really think we need this, and I don't think it's such a big deal in the first place, like if, like to consider this as an option. So that being said, I'm not really a fan of Ultimate Hunter in terms of these runes. Next, I think Treasure Hunter is pretty bad as well. I mean, yeah, we can get a little bit of extra gold, but I think they nerfed it too by some gold this patch. So we're kind of getting less than we would before. And next thing is, like, we kind of need to roam the map to make use of this rune in the first place. And again, once you kill everybody, you're basically stacked on the Treasure Hunter stacks, and you can't get any more gold after that. So the rune kind of really falls off, and there's not a giant reward. Yeah, it could be good on some other champions or snowballing, but if we're talking about Renekton, it's not really a big deal, and I don't really think we should be taking this. And it's probably just as bad as Ultimate Hunter. If anything, you could argue that Ultimate Hunter is better because we're maintaining something. So I guess Treasure Hunter's worst, and then Ultimate Hunter's after that, like technically, but they're both pretty bad. The next option we can consider is Relentless Hunter. Now this actually can be useful because if we do kill our laner, then we start killing everyone else. We're going to have that out of combat moon speed, which helps us roam the map more. It's going to help us set up for flanks, get to places quickly compared to other champions. Like, Renekton is he's a really strong champion with moon speed. He's probably like one of the most underrated champions when it comes to this stat, because being outside that moon speed, it just makes you a giant threat. You can be anywhere on the map. If you ever played with Ghost on Renekton too, you're able to do a lot in team fights if you're really exceptional at using your positioning correctly. So with that being said, while this is like out of combat moon speed, it's still a viable option. But if we're going to talk about the only option I would consider, it would be Ingenious Hunter. Ingenious Hunter's item haste is a really big deal, especially for like playstyles like the Prowler playstyle, because all our item cooldowns are getting affected by this. So our Prowler's Claw, I think can go down to like 60 seconds from like 90 after like killing everyone. I think so, this is off the top of my head. It's something around that at least. I haven't really thought about it as I'm saying this right now, and I haven't really used it in a while, to be quite fair. But generally, like, you have a lot of item haste you can play around with, have an earlier Prowler's Claw for fights. Not only does it affect that, but it affects Blair Rune King, and with the nerfs to the cooldown, it's actually helping that come off the cooldown a lot more often. Next, our red trinket is also getting affected, or just our trinkets in general, and being that the cooldown is going to be nerfed as well, moving on to patch 13.5, it's kind of a big deal to have this as well to like help us get up more often throughout the game. And I mean, it's just super good. Like, if you're playing with a lot of item actors like Ghostblade, maybe a Scimitar item, if you are going to build that, like there's a lot of usages for this Ingenious Hunter. And I think if you are going to go any rooms with Domination tree, I'd recommend these probably 10 out of 10, like just 100% of the time, you know. You probably always want to have these two. Now, you can make a case for some matchup where you want some additional health early, but ultimately, I think Sudden Impact is going to be the impact here, especially to end out the Domination set of runes. Next, I do want to talk about the Sorcery runes. Firstly, I'm not a big fan of Sorcery. I just think for Renekton, Resolve and Domination are just so much better than Sorcery. I know in the past that players like RTO like to have some kind of, you know, gimmicky style with it, trying to get like a lot of moon speed or like scaling power, but we don't really care so much about it, and it's been so much nerfed over the years. I don't even ever see why we consider these as an option, compared to the other trees where they're still relatively strong and still give a lot more power in our most essential parts of the game. And I will talk about that towards the end, but if I'll just talk about these runes right now. Nullifying Orb, I don't think we ever need to consider this. There's just no point to get this as a rune. Like, why do we care about being lower health and then having this proc, you know? Like, I don't really see the point in this. Now, it has like a pretty decent scaling, but ultimately, just going a Mormal Mortius is good enough. And this saves us an extra rune slot, which could be used for something else. And the fact that, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see why we need this. Like, I think it's a bit overkill having a Hex Drinker and this on top of that. And if there is a lot of AP threats in the first place, and you are thinking that way, then why do you simply need this? Like, there's just not really a point for this rune, in my opinion, unless you're playing an actual assassin champion that probably needs this in a matchup that you just get countered by. So with that being said, I don't really consider this a good option. Obviously, we can't use mana flow bans, so I'm going to skip that too. Next, we have Nimbus Cloak. There was a time where Nimbus Cloak was pretty strong, and I believe it was like a couple years ago. But being that it's heavily nerfed and we don't really care about this in the first place, it's just not an option we want to consider. So I'm just not going to really talk about this either. Next, we have the secondary runes of the Sorcery tree. Now, each of these can be pretty decent in their own right. However, I don't think it outweighs the other trees, but just to talk about them, I think Absolute Focus could have potential for Renekton's early game, being that we can get up to 18 AD, which is also by level 18, which is pretty underwhelming if I say so. I think, like, it could have some value if you're playing some setup with Scorch and Absolute Focus just to maximize your early AD damage and just the cheese. But ultimately, you don't need that in the first place. Renekton's already the king of First Bloods. Like, you can kill anyone if you play a matchup properly. It just comes down to your own play, and having absolute focus kind of takes away, like, the focus from the actual game, where you could have another rune and do a lot more in the process. So, I don't really think it's a good rune, and I think it's just pretty underwhelming in the first place. Next, we have Celerity. Probably, like, one of the better runes here, and probably one of the more viables. Having 7% more effective moon speed is definitely really good, and you also gain 1 extra moon speed by level 1. Obviously, the more that we're going to be having, our bonuses are going to be empowered by 7%, and I think it's pretty strong just if you want to, like, have a playstyle that doesn't get kited so much. So if you was going to go, like, some kind of Conqueror Sorcery playstyle with a Godrekton or something with a lot of haste as well, I think this is certainly a good candidate for being pretty well fit in your builds. However, I haven't really tried this out a lot, but I feel like it could definitely be a good option, and if anybody wants to try that, then please let me know. I think it could be interesting, and maybe I'll give it a try as well. Maybe I'll do that now that I'm thinking more into the rune aspect of how this could be good in a playstyle. Next, we have Transcendence. Definitely another good rune for Renekton if we're considering this tree for what it is. You gain haste over time. Renekton likes the haste. The more haste that we have, the more abilities come up, and the more outplay potential we have in being able to kill people. And obviously, by level 11, we also reset our cooldowns by 20%. So it's like a little mini Sojin as well, if you guys remember the old Spirit of Sojin back in the day, where our ultimate would reduce like a ton of cooldown from auto attacks. This kind of does it from killing a champion, and then that allows us to turn the fight and also use our abilities that are about to come up on an enemy champion. So definitely a good outplay factor, but we are kind of waiting for the later stages. And by that point anyways, we might not even get those chances in the first place. So it's really, you either have it or you don't, like, in those situations. Like, maybe you don't even need it to. Like, it's not the biggest decider, and certainly I don't think it's really that, it doesn't really matter that much, to be quite honest. And lastly, for the last row of runes, we have Scorch, Waterwalking, and Gathering Storm, and I think a lot of these are pretty underwhelming. Scorched, obviously we could choose a little bit of extra damage, and for, like, our pressure. However, the cooldown being 10 seconds, I mean, it kind of works for our other abilities, but as a rune itself and the concept, I don't think it's as good as like a mid lane or something that wants higher pressure in a ranged champion. Like, a ranged champion would definitely use this a lot more effectively and efficiently than a melee champion. So I think Scorched probably isn't a good idea, and it probably scorches our chances of actually, you know, doing a lot of other runes. So again, I'm not really sold on this rune. It's a hyper cheese rune that kind of squeezes like a 0.1 like extra bit of, you know, potential in our gameplay to do something, but I don't think it really matters, to be quite honest. Waterwalking, I mean, we don't really care about that. Yes, we can gain some AD and some moon speed in the river, but how often are fights really happen in the river? Like, I mean, yeah, we can have like a Baron fight and it can like work, or like just being able to dance around there with extra moon speed, or maybe like an early fight for Scuttle, but I don't think it's really that great. Very specific and cheese overall, and I think we move past this rune. We walk past this rune to go to Gathering Storm. Gathering Storm, probably the only choice here that would be good for a last rune. However, waiting up to these stats here is definitely not, you know, your typical. Now, yes, the whole Gathering Storm rune is probably like really cool. Like, wow, I can gain 101 extra AD in an hour game, you know, but how often is that happening? Games average between like 20 minutes, you know, and 20 minutes we're just getting 14 AD, we're getting just over a little bit more of a longsword, you know, and in that time we could end with something completely different that gives us more gold to build more items and to outweigh that stat as well. So, you know, I sound very against sorcery, and that's because I am, but I'm also just trying to share with you guys that I think there's just better runes than these, to be quite honest, and I think that 14 AD doesn't outweigh a Demolish or something that can take us a play and get us some gold, you know, just as an example, right? And I think it's just not really that good to wait out that long. But with that being said, let's also talk about the last runes, Inspiration. Inspiration did have a time where it was pretty good, but overall through the years and all the nerfs that this tree has had, I don't think it's a strong option, and I think there's only a limited amount of options we can pick between if we're going to maximize what we can do with it. Starting with the top row, I think Hex Flash is definitely not really, it doesn't really matter. Very hyper cheese, hyper specific again for a situation that could probably never even happen in most games. And yeah, we could probably cheese like some playing a mid bush where someone's low and we don't have flash. But at the end of the day, how often are we getting to use this rune in mid game? Like, it's very hyper brain, very like 1 in a million chance that this works, and I just don't think it's really that great here. Next we have Magical Footwear. Magical Footwear used to be a lot better, but they've nerfed the time you get it since then, and I think that waiting for boots can be a very big con, just due to the fact that, like, maybe we need some boots early in some matchups, like a Jax, like, just to get out of his range, or if he's trying to stun us, we can use the boots to our advantage to give us high moon speed for our dashes, and also just being able to kite out. And I think for mid-game too, not just mid-game, but I think just like approaching that like 50-minute mark or like just before that, it can be a big backfire not having boots ready or like upgraded by then. And I think it's just like, yeah, we could say 300 gold, but does that entirely matter? Like, I don't know. I think it outweighs the potential con of waiting for Magical Footwear. And not being able to get a plated steel caps in some matchups can be really terrible. Or even just Merc Treads against heavy CC. And in a meta where CC is kind of dominating everything, I feel like this rune here and just weighing out for that isn't really a good choice for Renekton. Maybe on another champion, but most certainly not Renekton. Lastly, in the first column, we have Perfect Timing. I don't think this really matters. I think it's kind of way past our chances of getting, and I'd rather just buy this as a mid-game item instead of waiting. And the fact that it's already taken up a slot early, it kind of takes away from us stacking longswords or some other component. And I think that's a giant con too towards Renekton's early game. In the second row, we have Futures Market. Futures Market is probably really good if you know what you're doing with it. Now, that's not to say you should use this item every time you back for a longsword in base, but I think it's only better to use when you're about to finish an item. I've once used this rune, and I've once like got Prowler's Claw like within 5.5 minutes, like with how crazy the game was, and it was absolutely insane that I even achieved it. And we can have moments like that, but it's very rare. And again, I think at most, we just want this if we're going to like try to play for the early game. Like super, like with our intentions to end the game out early, we want to take this rune to maximize our gold income by a little bit and rush and to finish that rush item that we want, like a Prowler's Claw. I think that's the only time we really want it. So other than that, I don't really see it as being the best option. Well, it's definitely probably the best option you can take. But, you know, for a tree and rune, it's kind of whatever. Like, yeah, if you want to end the game early, it's good. But other than that, I don't think it's really that important. Speaking of things that aren't as important, Minion Dematerializer is also another one. I think it's kind of whatever. Renekton already has good wave clear, and I think it's just a waste of a rune, personally. I don't think it really matters. And lastly in this row, we have Biscuit Delivery. I think Biscuits lose potential just due to the fact that we're not getting mana out of it, and they have nerfed these ever since. So I think the only delivery this is getting is going into the trash bin, because this rune itself definitely isn't really good. And I know you guys at this point are probably noticing on the puns. I'm just trying to make it interesting, because I really feel like these runes aren't really worth talking about, but I'm just trying to give you guys some, you know, thoughts on it and how I feel as a 5 million point Renekton player. And I definitely think it's, you know, not really that good. And a lot of these runes are definitely nerfed past their prime to even be considered these days. So it's probably why I sound like this, if you guys are wondering. So I just want to get that cleared out as well. But in the last row, just to finish off talking about the minor runes, Cosmic Insight is definitely a lot better in like these set of runes. Probably by far the best rune that you can take. Having 80 Summoner Spell Haste is perfect just for having Summoners up more often. If you're playing with your Flash, and being that Renekton is a Flash-reliant champion, having the Flash up more often definitely allows you to create more players and have Ignite up before your opponent, meaning they're not really going to be ready for that. So just having this, or even your TP cooldown, like there's a lot of uses where this can be good, and the enemies won't suspect it if they are a player that times abilities like within high reload. But other than that, you know, it's definitely really good, but it's just like you have to pick this, you have to pick something else, and it's just a weak tree. But if you are going to go Inspiration, you should always take this 100,000%. And the other bonus is that it gives us Item Haste, which allows us to have more cooldowns on our Prowler's Claw, our Borks, Gore Drinkers, whatever it may be, you know? Like, it's a really good rune in that aspect. But unfortunately, it's kind of in the wrong tree if we were going to use this. After Cosmic Insight, Approach Velocity, I don't really see it being that good. Like, yeah, it can proc if we, like, stun, like, you know, we can able to run to champs faster, but we're already in range in the first place, you know? Like, yeah, our team can also activate the rune for us, but it's very, like, whatever, and sometimes we can't even make use of that because we're waiting for our abilities in the first place, or we're waiting for a situation to occur, and we shouldn't go off the impulse of our team stunning someone to go in. Like, it should always be thought out beforehand. And if we don't, and even before that, like going in the right time and not even like activating this rune, it's just kind of wasted. And I just feel like it has no potential, as well as the Time Warp tonic, which has been heavily nerfed, and the fact that we don't really use Corrupting Potion on this champion. It's not really that good in the first place, and there's not much else to talk about with these runes, really. Like, Inspiration is just a very finicky tree. And if you're going to take either two, it's definitely should be these, in my opinion. And I only recommend these if you're trying to snowball early and try to close out a game. Now that we've talked about all the minor runes, it's time to talk about what I wanted to initially, just about like minor runes in general. So, the thing with Resolve Tree, right, is that it's just so good overall compared to any other tree. I just don't see why you don't want to take it. Like, think about it. If Renekton's gameplay is more oriented towards the early to mid game, then Resolve has every rune for that, because the Resolve Tree basically has everything. And for every matchup, it's so versatile. There's so many like types of things you can do with this. Like, if there's games we need to get gold and end early, take towers, we have a Demolish. If we need to, you know, scale into the game a bit, like try and get a second tank item, like if we're going to go bulk Jack Show, a conditioning can be good, you know, and that comes online after 12 minutes, gives us more stats, tankiness, to help us have more stats against the enemy. Like, conditioning is good then. Or if there's a matchup where there's lots of poke, we want to survive, second wind's good. If there's a matchup with burst and like we want to mind game the enemy, like not able like to dive us based on the enemy jungle picks, like Bone Playing's also good for that. So like, I mean, I can keep going on too, like Overgrowth, yeah, that's like good scaling, probably like one of the lesser runes, but it makes us even more tanky. It makes us so we're able to tank more damage, have that little extra health that we lost from our ultimate way back, and it just gives us a lot to work with, even if it's like a little fractional. Like, the more armor and magic resist we receive, it's just doing a lot better. And then we have Revitalize for healing, some healing builds, like Unflinching, good for tenacity and all the stuns. Like, you see where I'm getting to here? Like, the Resolve Tree is just superior compared to everything else. And if there is going to be another rune tree to do better than that, it's Domination. But that's more in the mid game than the early game. So yeah, like, with that being said, I just think that Resolve is better than any other tree. And I think when people try to ask, like, yeah, there's the specific Theorycraft situations where the other runes can work. But ultimately, if you want something simple and you want to just, like, be focused and have something to play off of, I think Resolve is the best. And it's also like, you know, maybe in the end they don't even matter. It's more so about Keystones. That's how the game's balanced. Other than that, you can take everything else. But again, I think for Renekton and the way he operates and what he wants to achieve, I definitely think going Resolve is by far the best option here. And that's probably all I'll talk about with minor runes right now. So now that we talked about all the minor runes, I think it is worth to give some limelight on some of the extra Keystones, because, I mean, we may as well do that while I'm here. And just to give you guys the utmost insight. Now, these are definitely lesser known options, and right now you probably don't even need to watch more of the rest of the video, but I guess I'll just cover it right now just so I can have this guide as like a be-all end-all type of guide where people don't really need to know you know, any other types of information or like have to ask me this question. Like, everything will be in this video. So right now, let's talk about the Keystones. So, Lethal Tempo. This rune is, it can be good and bad in multiple ways, and I don't think it's ever worth considering the good of it, because at the end of the day, we need a damage keystone. But the whole idea of this rune, when it was strong, back at probably towards the start of season 12, is that the lethal tempo gave so much attack speed that it was able to like help us outduel early. And because Conqueror was a bit weak at the time, or like not as great as it could be, lethal tempo provided us an option to have a lot of DPS, and it allowed us to cheese early game and make us build Fury more, being that it also gave us a lot of attack speed. Like, there's a lot of things to it that like made it a pretty good choice. Now, by that time, it's been nerfed a lot, it scales a lot later into the game, and being that we don't really care at that point, and we can't really use a lot of auto attacks against a lot of types of champions, and we need to rely off our AD casting ability, I think lethal tempo is definitely not the greatest option. And I think even for a lot of other matchups, it's not really considered even worth like taking it on numerous champions. Like, even champs like Aery were taking this, but the champ doesn't take that anymore because Conqueror is just superior. The AD, like the healing, just outweigh what lethal tempo gives, and lethal tempo remains a rune that's better for ranged champions than it is for melee champions. Unless that's if you're the likes of a Jax or some kind of Trendemir. But even then, I think those two prefer Conqueror more so. Footwork is more of a safe laning keystone, And I think there's no point really talking about this. We're not really playing for lane in a way of trying to sustain and be safe, and it's kind of hard to even proc the auto attack. And the fact that this, like, what do we do next, right? Like, we go in, we proc the rune, then we run off. Like, what, you know, like, it's kind of backwards thinking for this rune, because by the time we are going to try and use this, we're locked in all our animations, and we need to, like, do something else within that time of animation cancelling and doing everything else. We're never really making use of the fleet footwork after the laning phase, so it's definitely a very counterintuitive option that I also don't think is good within the precision tree or Renekton. For Domination, I already talked about Electrocute briefly, but this can be a viable option. However, the damage drop-off compared to PTA is a lot more noticeable. Like, if we compare here, 30 to 180 damage. Press the attack is 40 to 180. And it always procs. There's no cooldown. There's like a 4-second cooldown on press the attack. And a lot of that time is also us getting exposure damage, which is even more damage from our rest of our abilities and auto attacks. So it's always out-damaging Conqueror, no matter what way you look at it. And the fact that this rune has a 25-second to 20-second cooldown doesn't really do any better. And the 0.4 bonus AD scaling, that's not going to really amount to anything. Even on a full AD playstyle, like PTA is always doing more damage. And if I maybe even here, I'll just do a little like side-by-side of the damage just out of curiosity. This is essentially what it is. Now, the only pro that Electrocute does have is that we can just use our abilities and not even auto-attack to proc this rune. But that still should not outweigh what press the attack does. And it also allows us to use our auto-attacks and get more out of it as well, which is kind of the whole point of Renekton if you think about it. Like, Renekton uses a lot of auto-weaving, animation cancels. Like, it just makes Electrocute a very null option in comparison and probably shouldn't be considered. Predator, well, as for this rune, I think it's kind of like just whatever. We don't really care. Like, there could be some fun, like, Predator style where you roam to every other lane, you know, doing your best, you know, certain streamer cosplay, if you know what I'm talking about. Wink, wink. But yeah, like, you know, you can just like roam around, try and like get kills. But again, it's all front loaded onto one room, your damage. And it's even then, it's like very marginable. And I don't think it's as great. Like, yeah, it's same damage as Electrocute pretty much. But still, it's just kind of whatever. And cooldown's too long to make use of. So it's more of a for fun option if we can really consider things. Dark Harvest, same deal, pretty much for fun. Pick it on ARAM, pick it on Earth, whatever it may be. Don't play in an actual game. Damage is too low, and, you know, it's just whatever. Ella Blades, very cheesy, like if you want to build Fury for a level 1 or to take in a 1v1 custom game. Other than that, no other usage, so that will be it from the Domination tree. Sorcery, well, Aery, yeah, you could play a Q-poke, like a Q-poke style within lane. You know, you can just like proc it early, do a bit of damage, play with like a Scorch or something. But again, are we playing Twisted Fate or are we playing Renekton, you know? Like, we don't play it like a poke champ, we play it like an all-in burst champion, you know? And Aery's not doing justice here, and I think it's just not it. Comet, same deal. Basically what I just said about Summon Aery. Phase Rush, probably the most fun option out of Sorcery, because we can, you know, go in, do a combo, then disengage. Could be good for some champion like an Urgot, maybe. You know, quickly do damage, disengage, like, get out of the harm's way. Could definitely be good for that, but I don't think it's worth the sacrifice of a damage rune. However, it is a fun option if you want to try to have some playstyle to avoid damage, or even like a Darius if you think about it, but Darius as it is already pretty easy to play against if you know what you're doing, so I think the use of Phase Rush is definitely a fun option. Grasp of the Undying, also known as the RTO rune in the Resolve tree. Grasp of the Undying is more of a for fun rune. It is getting changed next patch 2. I believe the damage is getting nerfed, but you are getting extra health by 2, so you gain 7 health per every proc. Now, again, this is pretty much for fun. Don't really recommend it, unless maybe you're some RTO stan and like the rune, but it's like, why would you go less when you could go more? But again, if you like having fun and you want that bit of sustain, or like you love seeing your health bar scale and you want to be like a fake Scion, then there you go, you have Grasp of the Undying. However, you know, I certainly think it more as Grasp of the Dying, because every time I've played this rune, I'm perma-dying in my games, so it's not really helping me, you know, grasp anything. I'm just grasping onto defeats, if anything, you know. I don't really see it as an Undying option like another champion, and Renekton doesn't really work the same way as these other tank champs, so I just think it's not really a good option just for that matter as well. Aftershock, well, I mean, we proc it on W, probably a good support option. If you guys ever want to play support Renekton, I mean, even PTA is better than that because your teammates proc the rune, but again, Aftershock is an option if you just want to be tanky, go some full tank build for fun. Definitely could do that, and it procs off your W. But yeah, that's basically as much as it's to say. Guardian, I mean, who takes Guardian, right? Like, I don't care about Guardian. I'm sure you guys don't either. Lastly, on the inspiration tree, we have Glacial. Glacial, well, I mean, it's just whatever. We don't really care. Like, it's just, I don't know why you would even consider this option. Like, I feel like you probably belong in a mental ward if you are considering this option. Like, no flame and obviously in-game, but it's like, why would you do this? Like I have to think you're playing Ultimate Bravery if you're taking this rune, you know? And that's just how I perceive it. Like, it's an Ultimate Bravery rune, and if you have to do it for the challenge, then so be it, you know, and God bless. I hope it goes well. Next, we have Spellbook. Spellbook was only good once, and that was, like, with the release of the rune in Season 8 or 9? I think it was 8, actually. Because at the time, you could only take, like, a minimum amount of runes. It was just Glacial, this, and Kleptomancy. And I think the Spellbook gave a lot of AD with the combination, and that's what made it a viable choice, as well as like it having extra cooldown reduction compared to other runes. But since then, never worked it, and since then, Spellbook will remain sealed because no one's reading that shit anymore. Wait, I probably shouldn't swear on this video, but whatever, whatever YouTube if they want to like demonetize. But yeah, like I just think it's a pretty terrible option, and you probably don't really need this in reality. And the only other rune we can actually talk about that has any relevance at all is probably First Strike, because First Strike is very interesting, right? First Strike, also known as Kleptomancy Reborn, is a rune that I was actually going to make a big video on when it first came out. I essentially did a whole giant video comparing this to Press the Attack, which I never released. So this rune, I kind of thought initially that it could be good because the way it works is, as long as we're the first to strike, all our abilities are being empowered. So we don't have to proc any ability, like we don't have to proc it like beforehand with auto attacks or our W. So essentially our damage from the get-go is empowered by 9%. And throughout the more damage that we deal, the more gold that we also gain. But the gold was more or less like, I mean, it's there and it's good, but it didn't outweigh the damage. Not by a long shot. Press the Attack was always the more reliable option because you could always proc it. There was like no downside to the rune. Within the cooldown, the fact that if we get hit, it's basically on cooldown, then we can't use it. And the fact that, even damage-wise, Press the Attack was always out-damaging First Strike because of the proc, and also the extra exposure damage that you're getting. And being that it does scale through the game, at all stages of the game, Press the Attack was either even or it was ahead. And when it was ahead, it was by a big shot ahead. So with that being said, like, First Strike, probably interested if you want to go some money build. Maybe there's minimal threats of like being hit by a champion. However, I don't think it's really good, and the consequences of this rune like are just severely giant compared to anything else that you can take. So with that being said, First Strike, you know, is definitely not striking within our gameplay, and I think it's just not really worth taking. And with that being said as well, that is all the Keystones, and there's not much else to really talk about. The last thing I will say, though, just to, you know, talk to you guys like one-on-one and just like explore these runes and stuff, is that maybe I don't agree with some choices, but ultimately it's whatever you can find work within your own self. Over the years, there's been lots of different players that have tried different runes and have always, you know, had a lot of success. One of my biggest idols that I will shout out to within the Renekton mains community is Nerif. Nerif has been a challenger Renekton player ever since the game first came out, as far as I'm aware. You know, he's been a pretty long-term OG of the game. He's been challenger many times, you know. And he's always had a very interesting way of playing Renekton. He's always went builds that were not for the, you know, the normal people. And it's not to say that he's crazy and belongs in an asylum, but what I'm saying is like, his builds didn't really, like, his builds would benefit his own strength in what he's able to do. Like, going Bloodthirster Ghostblade for so many years when it wasn't good, or like, let's say not good for other players. Or like when you would go Death Stance, Triforce, Ghostblade, like, you know, all these type of builds, or even Eclipse when it wasn't as good as well. Like, so to me, it wasn't good, but to him, it was great, and it gave him a plan. And at the end of the day, runes and items don't matter. It's all about how you play the game that matters. So whatever you want to do, that is up to you. It's just how you execute it, and what your game plan is to do that. And being that he's an example of many other Renekton players and other players within the League of Legends game that have had success going off meta build or some sort of like that, that's not to say that you can't either. So I want to end off this video just saying, play whatever you want to play. Play whatever works for you, because you matter at the end of the day. This game is all on you. Like, nothing else matters around it. Like, people will tell you not to do stuff. People will tell you to go certain things. But at the end of the day, it's whatever you're comfortable with. I can only give you what I'm preaching, you know, and what other people have, like, you know, liked and what the most success is, in my view. But again, for others, it could be different. So, with that being said, be open-minded. Try anything that you want to try, because maybe you're finding out something that maybe I never knew that could work, and maybe you can also silence me and make me a believer. And that's how a league should be too. So yeah, guys, that's all I want to say. Thank you for watching my runes guide. Thank you for all the support too. Just thank you for watching this video, and thank you for sticking by if you have got this long. And if you're a new viewer, make sure to sub, make sure to like, comment, follow my TikTok, follow my socials. Just, you know, I appreciate the support. I appreciate you guys watching me, and I'm going to be making more guides. I want to make this channel very guide-centric. I want to have game players. I want to be like the best educational top laner, and also the most educational Renekton player that I can be with you guys, because a lot of this champion has been undefined by the community of League of Legends, and I want to be the person to reveal the secrets that I know and all the knowledge that I know about Renekton within my time of playing since Season 4. And that'll be my goal. And if there's any guides that you guys want to see, or any like types of videos, then leave in the comments below too. Tell me, and I'll make a video. I'll do my best that I can. With that being said, guys, peace out, have a good one, and thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.